Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. I stumbled across this game by Bobby Fischer that he played in the Simultaneous in 1964. Now this game is interesting because it's a very irregular opening with one b4, and Fischer never usually played this sort of setup against anyone, especially in classical games, but I guess in Simuls it's a bit of fun, a bit of banter, so this is probably why he played it. But it's a very interesting game, and if you'd like me to go through this opening, 1b4, in the future, do let me know in the comments and I'll try and cover it because it's quite interesting and it's quite a nice sideline to play against opponents if you want to surprise them. I've played it in quite big tournaments actually and done quite well. But yeah, Bobby Fischer played this move, 1b4 in the year 1964 against a J Gloger. So obviously Fischer's playing white and Gloger's playing with the black pieces. And play continued with e5, which develops the centre pawn for black and unleashes the bishop against white's pawn on b4. So already we have to say, oh, what's white doing? This looks like a bit of a crap opening, to be perfectly honest with you, because already black's attacking white. However, white's got some nice tricks up their sleeve. Bishop b2, white attacks the e5 pawn, and typically here a trade could occur with bishop takes b4 and white can just take on e5. After knight to f6, e3. White's basic plan is to play bishop to e2, knight to f3, d4, c4. The argument is that white's actually gained a centre pawn and black's gained a pawn on the b file. And the actual theory behind this is that the e pawn is stronger, so white should be doing better because obviously centre pawns are much stronger. But in this game, black played the solid approach and played f6. It's a pretty nice setup, to be honest, for black, because now basically the black pawns are all on dark squares, stopping the bishop on b2, and now black's bishop still attacks b4. But now we get into a great little gambit that Fischer played. It's called the Sokolsky Gambit, and this is where white now plays e4. So black takes the pawn on b4, whips that straight off, and white can play bishop to c4. So why has white done this? Well, this bishop is incredibly strong. The f6 move played by black now makes their king very weak, and it's going to be very hard for black to castle kingside. Also, this queen can eye up this h5 square with a nice check at any point, and it might force black to play g6, another weakness. But white has given up a whole pawn, so it just depends who's got the better attack. Who's got the better play, to be honest. So knight to e7 was played by black, and typically here white could opt to play f4. It's been played in quite a few games. Typically if pawn takes f4, white can play knight to h3, attacking the pawn again. And after black plays d5, this has been played in multiple games by the way, so it technically is theory. So pawn takes d5, bishop takes h3. Then could come queen h5 check, g6, and queen takes h3. But the point is now, white's got a very nice position. Maybe could play queen to e6 at some point, but you have to say white's position looks very strong, especially with this bishop eyeing up f6 as well. So after knight to e7 though, instead of playing f4, Fischer just played queen h5 check, which makes a lot of sense. If black played g6 to block, white can just play queen h4. And attack f6, and black's got a lot of weaknesses. In the game then, black played knight to g6 to block the check, and now Fischer does play f4, prepares to move f5, which will actually win a whole piece. So black's actually forced to take, he takes f4. And now there's two moves that could be played. In the game, Fischer played knight to f3. In another game though, this just is a demonstration of how black has to be careful, because in another game a3 was played. Black played d5 in this game, and after bishop takes d5, c6, bishop goes back to b3, and there was queen a5 by black, so threatening the queen on h5. And in this particular game, white came up with a very clever move of e5, so stops the trade of queens. And after bishop to e7 was played, this is the nice move. There was bishop f7 by white with check. So attacking the king with check and attacking the knight. And in this position actually, black resigned the game. Point being is actually after king takes bishop, white could play e6 with check. A just good attack against black's queen. So after bishop takes, there's queen takes a5, and white just wins a whole piece. A whole queen, in fact. So that was just a demonstration of how white can play in these type of positions. Fischer, though, played knight to f3, develops. There was knight c6 in the game, knight c3, and bishop takes, and d6. And now Fischer starts harassing this knight on g6, black's weakness, with knight to h4. Threatens to play knight takes g6, and the h-pawn is pinned because then the queen can take the rook on h8. So black's forced to defend their knight, knight c to e7, and Fischer goes in for another attack, knight to f5, so attacks the pawn on g6, and black has to be a bit careful. So first up, black can't just take this knight off with bishop takes f5, for instance, because then just pawn takes, and yeah, the knight on g6 is pinned, and if d5 in this position, just bishop to e2, and white will pick up the knight at a later date. d5 was also another option here, but then white can play knight takes e7. After queen takes e7, there's queen takes d5 and c6. This is actually quite an interesting variation, because after queen d4, for instance, black could play b5 and try and kick this bishop away, which jumps back to d3. And after knight to e5, bishop to b4, a trade queen d8 and bishop to d6. It's quite maybe drawish, in fact, because both sides have got opposite coloured bishops. But if play continued on, I think maybe white has a slight edge. However, it's going to be very hard to win this for white, to be honest. But it's very interesting nonetheless. But here, actually, after knight to f5, black went wrong. So the pawn on g7 is attacked by the knight, so the king defended it in the game, defends the pawn, which makes some sense. But Fischer actually could have gone in for the kill here. It's quite a nice position. I wonder what you would have played in this position, because white had a winning move. Bishop takes just f6 wins the game, because if g takes, queen h6 check, king goes back to e8, then can come knight to g7 with check, and if the king comes to f8, then knight to h5 check, king e8 and knight takes f6 is a win for white, it's checkmate. So king d7 is forced in this position, and white just simply plays queen to h3 with check. The best move given by the computer is to block with the knight, but if this happens, just pawn takes. King e7 castles for white is very nice. So after queen h3, it's possible for black to try and run away with the king with king to c6, but now can come bishop d5 check, takes, king takes, queen f3 with check, king d4, and then comes queen to c3, a little tickle as Nakamura would say, and then king to d4, rook to b1, and black's just totally lost actually, because after queen e7, let's say check, king f2, if black starts taking material here with queen takes, then the black king is just going to get mated. Look at this king in the centre of the board, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's pretty amazing it's not been mated already. Yeah, but moves like rook to b4 can come, rook to e1 for instance. Yeah, it's going to be a very nice mating net. So actually, in this position, Fischer did miss bishop takes f6, but that's a hard move to spot, especially in a simul, so we'll let him off with that. Instead he just castled, so develops. Queen e8 was played, but now Fischer does notice the move. He plays bishop takes f6. It's a bit more obvious this time, because if pawn takes, then queen h6 is just checkmate. So in the game, black took on f5, bishop takes knight, there was pawn takes, and now comes d5. But Fischer's just crashing in here. He plays pawn takes knight, the pawn on h7 is pinned, because then the queen will take the rook. If queen takes the pawn instead, then just bishop takes knight with check, king takes, and queen takes d5. White's a whole piece up, so that's resignable for black. So in the game, pawn takes bishop was played instead, but now Fischer just comes in for the kill. Queen h6 check, King G8's the only move, and he plays a very nice move, just G7, and the pawn will pick up the rook on H8. Of course, black could have played pawn takes bishop, but then obviously just takes, gets a queen takes F6, let's say King G8, and basically white's just picking up everything with moves like rook takes F4, for instance. So this was the final position. I just thought I'd show you this game because Fischer never really plays such strange openings like 1b4. So if you really do want me to look at this Sokolsky Gambit, do let me know in the comments and I'll try and cover it. It's a good weapon to have as white, especially if you're sick of playing moves like e4 and d4 or c4. Anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.